Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Business Problems Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Chrysler. Each episode, we talk to business owners and leaders to learn about their story, their business, the challenges they've overcome, and the challenges they still face. You'll hear fresh insights, real talk, and get inspiration to grow your business. Hey, everybody. So excited to be welcoming Ryan Wicklum to the podcast today. Ryan has spent 25 years on both sides of the supply chain and sales relationship. After cutting his teeth at Magna International, he moved on to build a supply chain for an industrial robotics startup, but has recently moved on to the sales side of the equation. Ryan is particularly versed at building and solidifying business relationships that provide optimal benefit for everyone involved. When he's not fighting the good fight in business, he loves spending time with his wife, Julie, 2 kids, and adorable mini golden doodle, Griffey. That's right. Ryan, thanks so much for joining me on the Everyday Business Problems Podcast.
Oh, Dave, it's a pleasure, man.
Yeah, I'm so excited to get into this with you today, talking about business relationships that work, because I think a lot of people throw that around and talk about ways to build relationships, and everybody wants to build a relationship. And I'm not here to just sell you something, but in my experience, and I'm excited to get your take on this, but in my experience, it is a real art and a process to building a relationship that works for everybody that's involved.
Right. Yeah. First off, thanks for having me. Obviously, I'm excited to be here, Dave. I think that when it comes to relationships, the temptation in business is to get to the numbers as fast as possible. And I think that there's a hard and fast rule that I've always worked by, that qualitative influences quantitative, but quantitative does not influence qualitative. And I think that when you kind of look at that and kind of break that down, what it means is that as long as you're strong and you determine that the ultimate goal is some kind of mutually beneficial partnership, then it's easy to kind of use that as a framework, as almost like the support infrastructure for the relationship. And then when you get to a point where you're kind of feeding some details in and you look into, you understand that the mutual benefit's the goal, but there are different motivations too. And one of the best things to do is do a quick assessment on who is motivated by what. Because if people are bringing, are motivated by something that is unknown, then you really don't have that true definition of success. And that's where relationships tend to fall back sometimes.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you kind of brought up about jumping into the numbers, and people want to build off of that, I think. And one thing that kind of strikes me about that is, we all know that we're here to sell something, right? Sure. Everybody gets that part of it, but it's that bridging that gap and kind of utilizing that relationship to get to the point of the numbers. How, in your experience, give us maybe just a 10,000 foot view on how you look at when you get into a meeting with somebody, let's say a cold call, right? And you're just starting to build that initial rapport with somebody. You both know why you're there, right? Like, let's be serious about it. You both know why you're there, but how do you look at that and try to get to the point where you can identify kind of those KPIs for that person? What's important to them? What are some of those qualifying questions? I think that'd be really beneficial to people.
Yeah, I think honestly, if from the start, at the start of any kind of call or any kind of discussion, any kind of email back and forth, you're establishing a tone. And if you establish a tone that, if you look at, okay, if you try to speed things up and you want to get to, somebody has money, somebody has a thing, and how do we get the money into the hands of the people who have the thing fastest? Then you kind of miss on, you're not going very deep in that relationship. It's very superficial. And I think that if you look at, like I said before, analyze motivation, ask questions about what motivates them. And beyond that, once they tell you, okay, for example, if I'm, like the cold call example you mentioned, I said, listen, to this person, I'll ask them, okay, what motivates you? And right away, if they say, pain relief, or they say ROI, or whatever their answer is, that dictates where, I go with the conversation. If right away they say, all I want to do is increase value, and obviously we all know that the only way to increase value is to increase function or decrease price. So that seems like a pretty, at that point the relationship is pretty much set, right? They don't want to go any deeper. It's almost like tactical. It's a tactical thing at that point. Not much strategy involved. If the answer is, we have these pain points, or you can ask them questions like, where do you want to be in 5 years, like with this business, or what do you see as success from, if we deliver our service or product to you, if we're sitting here in a year and we look back at a successful relationship, what happened? I think that allows you to determine motivation and really deepen that root of what drives someone in this particular situation. At that point, your questions are kind of directed in a direction, like they're kind of catered to, okay, how do we get from this motivation to a shared definition of success? And it really is that, like, you need to be open and need to anything, because I think that you need to be open to the idea of how do we both succeed? Because I'm a huge proponent of not winning a deal. I think that if you win a deal, that means somebody lost a deal, and automatically you're like, the power in the relationship is shifted, because now you have a winner and a loser. I think if you focus distinctly on that mutual benefit or symbiosis, whatever you want to call it, then that's where the true value is, and that's where you're going to have success that lasts a long time, and not just like that one tactical transaction.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, there's so many great things in what you just laid out there. A couple of things that jump out to me in terms of where I think a lot of people struggle. And that's why I asked that question, because a lot of people struggle with this balance or this thought process of, hey, we know we're both here for this reason, right? To exchange goods and services for financial gain.
Right.
But how do we not come across as being that, superficial, I'm doing the small talk thing so we can get to the real thing? And what you said in there in terms of, asking some of those qualifying questions and really letting that lead the process. And the other thing I think it does is it opens up the option to say, this isn't a great fit. And maybe I have another resource. Maybe I can, make an introduction or whatever the case may be. But when you go into things without a preconceived notion of there's going to be that exchange, I think it opens you up to that. And the other thing, I really love what you said in there, because again, mindset is what jumped into my mind when you said it, is that win-win versus the win-lose. And when you say that you've won a deal, that there really is then somebody that's less at less of a status than you are because you've won this deal, and making it very much a mutual thing. Because again, back to what we're talking about, building relationships. We're not trying to have a transactional relationship. We want to build something that goes through the long term of things. So I really like what you unpacked there.
Especially if you're providing a service of any kind, because you believe in your service and you're passionate about the success of the service, but sometimes they don't need what you're offering, at least not for now, and that's okay.
Yeah,
because I've always thought that any service provider is half doctor and half trail guide. And automatically you're the doctor first, because you're assessing where the pain point is. And as soon as you kind of develop this diagnosis of or analysis of where the pain point is, it might become very clear that you are not the best person they want to talk to. But your quickest path to being a trusted advisor is by giving them something. Either you help them out, you provide introduction to somebody, you provide guidance of some kind, saying, listen, like, this answer is not the answer you want, but maybe try this answer, whatever it is. Once you've been the doctor and now they trust you that you've taken pain away to some degree, now you can be the trail guide. And now you can kind of guide them to the answer that you think you can provide or the service, because they automatically, when it comes up, let's say you are let's say you're a mechanic, and right away you ask them and they said, no, yeah, we need our car fixed, but we're dying in finance, right? My accounting is much worse. I'm losing money all the time. That's when you kind of have to look at, okay, maybe I can't, my mechanical solution isn't the way to go, but I can help them find an accountant, right? And then you've taken pain away. And then when it comes time for your mechanical solution, you're top of mind because they trust you now. You especially if you kind of disregarded your own personal gain or your own quantifiable gain to help them out. That shows that you genuinely, pardon my phrasing, but you give a crap about their success.
No, you're spot on with that. I mean, it's kind of the, people value honesty and integrity, and the only way to deliver those things and ultimately deliver value to people are to be open and honest and say, hey, here's what I think I can do. And sometimes that means we're not in the right spot right now for me to, offer this particular product or service to solve your problem. You're just not here. And this would be a better fit for you. And again, you're providing value to that person. You're doing it from a very honest and, honest and having integrity approach to it. So that's going to come across and resonate for people. So Ryan, how do you think that, starting out on the supply chain side of things, how do you think that has taught you how to be a more successful salesperson and build better relationships now that kind of things are on the sales process side of things?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that it was supply chain, but it was automotive supply chain, where I first cut my teeth working for Magna for those 13 years. I think that if you look at supply chains are fragile and there's many moving pieces. And if you don't have the right relationship all the way along your supply chain with your various providers, and not only that, but also internally with your internal suppliers or customers within your company, then you're kind of flying blind to that next disruption, because they're not going to go through a wall for you to help you out if something happens. Like if you let's say you're building robots and your metal frame doesn't come in or your circuit board doesn't come in and there's an extra 3-week lead time. If you don't have a previous relationship with that provider, they're not going to try to expedite those 3 weeks, eliminate that extra lead time. You're going to go way down the queue, right? So if you've given them enough to show that if the roles are reversed, you would do the same for them, they're more likely to keep you in that priority slot than kind of have you fall down the queue. Because let's be frank, especially nowadays, supply chains can't guarantee lead times. So because of that, you have a situation where you had best, especially when it comes to strategic providers, you always want to kind of categorize your and give your suppliers their due benefit, their due effort. But at the same time, need to kind of foresee what would happen if this provider added, 40% of their lead time to the end of it, and what normally would be they're providing you a service or a product. And likewise, if you look at, and God bless engineers, like I love me some engineers, but if you look at the whole design cycle from want to have, you typically supply chains at the end, and there's the purchasing procurement piece. But if design goes further into that assigned procurement piece of the project, you need to know that, now you've lessened their notice time. So now you're hoping that they're going to help you out too. So with supply chain, there's so many reasons that things can go wrong that you become very adept at making sure that they understand that you're on their side. And you want to be part of those mutually beneficial relationships. So when it comes to the sales side, I've spent 20 plus years in the supply chain side now with sales. I've become pretty adept at quickly, getting to that trusted advisor piece, because I can build relationships pretty clearly, pretty efficiently, and pretty effectively, because I can understand where there's waste in the process. Like, it's great to have conversation. It's great to chit chat. But sometimes that's not what the people want to talk about. Sometimes they want to get to the point, and you want to kind of match up the intent of the relationship pretty quickly. Like I said, analyze motivations. And if the person that you're talking to from a customer standpoint, if they don't want to be part of this mutually beneficial relationship, that means that they're pretty much digging in that they want to be in the driver's seat. They want to be in that winner's slot. So you need to quickly assess, can you handle being in that more, when it comes to status, that lower status position in that relationship? And if you can't, it's best to cut bait at that point. Keep them warm, but don't acquiesce to the needs of that customer if it's going to cause you that long-term pain down the road. So I think it's really a matter of quickly assessing what both people want, both sides want, and then how do we get there effectively and efficiently?
Yeah, again, and you're setting them up and knocking them dead here right now. So you're setting up for my next question, which I love. But before I get into that, I wanted to go back just into kind of playing both sides of things and understanding on that supply chain standpoint and what you've brought over from understanding that relationship building and being on, the needing end, right? Like, hey, I'm in a jam. I need you to come through for me. And now making that shift. And what's interesting to me is, a lot of times when you talk about supply chain and, procurement professionals, people that understand the internal side of that relationship, oftentimes they're getting direction to strain the relationships that have been built, right, for various reasons. And it's important to understand that. And I know you understand this, so I kind of want to, just touch on this for the listeners. It's important to understand when you as a business owner or somebody in a leadership role are giving the directions to strain those relationships, what you're really doing on both sides of that equation, you're putting things in your supply chain in jeopardy because there's always going to be that, back to your point, Ryan, there's always going to be that give and take. You want to build the relationship so that 100%. Way when you're in a jam, somebody can come through for you. And when you can allow some additional flexibility and leeway, you can give that, because that's the give and take that, especially for a company the size that you used to work for with Magna. I mean, that's the stuff that made magic happen and keep things, smooth sailing.
Yeah. And I think that, someone once told me, I think a mentor at Magna said that a strong relationship is the best risk mitigation. And I think it rings true consistently, because the risk always is that you haven't built a strong enough relationship with the provider, or you haven't built a strong enough relationship with the person who's doing sales, because it goes both ways. And knowing that you have this relationship in your back pocket, so to speak, and that you genuinely care about the success of the person across the table, whatever direction that is, I guess, then that's the best risk mitigation, because they know, and both, that, pardon my phrasing, but if crap hits the fan, you both will kind of coagulate together and form a team to try to solve whatever problem on whatever side it is. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that quote as well. It's that is a good one. I have to pull that one out of this. Yeah, I really like that. So no let's take try to take a little bit of a deeper dive into what your process is to identify those opportunities to what I would say kind of move up that relationship or take that step back to really understand what's the dynamics that you're at currently. How do we kind of, to your point, to identify people that are okay with the chit chat, they want some of that, or no, let's just jump right into business. I don't have time for that stuff. What can you walk us through, like at a more detailed level? What is some of your process? What are some of your keys that you pick up on throughout these conversations, and then kind of, put those into your mental notes, put those into your CRM to keep track of them? Because that's a whole nother component that we've not really talked about. Obviously, key component when you're talking about sales process. So I just like to take a little bit of a deeper dive into that for you and what you think.
Yeah, I think the number one thing is research. I think if you, like I said before, whatever side of the table you're on, do the research and really dig into what motivates somebody. What are some things they like? What's their history? Is there any kind of commonality that you have with them? Did you work in a similar company? Did you work in a similar industry? Check their LinkedIn activity. Are they active? Are they not active? Because chances are, if they're not that active on LinkedIn, and you can't really get a gauge on what their interests are, what their background is, you don't want to kind of risk right away those chit chat questions. You kind of want to start forming your tapestry before the conversation happens. And if you find that those nuggets of information that really help out, for example, if you know that a business acquaintance of yours is a baseball coach, right? Bring up baseball, see what happens, right? And understand that the conversation could go a certain way if they're receptive, and at the same time, it could go a certain way if they're not receptive. So always gauge what's going on. But the biggest thing, be flexible, right? Do research, but be flexible, because that's not tried and true. It's not steadfast. Also understand that conversations, it sounds kind of basic to say, people are human, right? So when you have these conversations, understand, when you're having them. For instance, like, you're gonna have a certain kind of conversation on Friday at 2:30 than you would Monday at 9:30, right? There's a different mindset. There's a different tone. If someone that it's hard to get up for those Monday morning calls, the last thing you want to do is kind of be cheery and not in their face with a bunch of questions, because right away, like they're off, they're done, right? And that's so always gauge kind of what's around you, gauge what the mood is, gauge what the tone is. And the biggest thing is also understand the big picture. And I'll give you an example. If you look at the way that the kind of quote unquote buyer-seller relationship used to work, it used to be buyers had money, sellers wanted the money. Therefore, there was a little bit of a class system going on there that the control was with the purchaser. Now it's even more, because a lot of stuff is done virtually. And today's buyer they're typically younger, they're tech savvy, they understand that the leverage is now kind of increased for them. So now, instead of having those, the stereotypical, longer meetings where, someone would actually go to the facility, and that happens often too, but doesn't happen as often as it used to. Like, business travel has definitely come down. I think that because of that, because now, buyers can kind of stack these virtual meetings up on each other, and they could spend like a Wednesday just talking to a bunch of people because they're buying one thing. But because they're tech savvy now, or more tech savvy, they've done their research. So not only have they done their research, but now the seller has to do their research into what other options are there, right? And there needs to be that alignment between, alignment of messaging between website and sales representative and LinkedIn activity. Everything needs to be aligned purposely to make sure that there's nothing that's going to be a surprise, or at least try to mitigate that risk. The biggest thing is that, like I said before, as an example, today's buyer is definitely a lot more tech savvy than they used to be. And therefore you have 20, 30 minutes to make your case in a lot of situations. So you best be prepared. You best be, understand where it could go, what other options they have, because it used to be that sales would get involved. They would contact, a sales professional at the 46%, 47% mark. Now it's closer to 60, because there's more options. And then the E side of e-commerce has become stronger and more prevalent and more readily available. So there's definitely, that's a good example of understanding the big picture, but also understanding the little details that are important through that conversation.
Yeah, again, just so many great points that you laid out in there, and some things that came to mind when you were talking about it. I mean, I completely agree with you on both sides of that, right? buyers today have so much access to information compared to what it used to be. And therefore, when you don't have your website and LinkedIn profile and content that you're creating, when all of those things don't jive to people, it's another signal, really, if you will, that, wait a second, what is this person, what is this business really all about? And, to your point about, if you're connecting with people, like I think we're talking mostly about B2B stuff, with my audience and with the things that you're doing. So, in that world, a lot of those initial conversations, initial touch points are happening on LinkedIn. And I liked your point about being mindful if people are active on there or not active, because again, if you're working on building out a sales pipeline and working on building out your, sales process in ultimately trying to get people through that, how often can you reach out to somebody that is not active, right? I mean, you can send the messages, but if you're not seeing any sort of activity on the other end, what's really the point, right? You want to find people that are engaged in a process, even if they're not necessarily looking for maybe your product or service right now, because again, not everybody is going to be open to building a relationship exactly when they are looking to make that purchase. So, if there's somebody that is in your target and that makes sense for all the things that you just laid out, go ahead and start building that relationship. I mean, that could turn into something, 6, 12, 18 months or further down the road. And there's nothing wrong with starting those touch points. And they don't have to be lengthy and scheduled calls and all of these different things, but you can be top of mind or more top of mind by doing all of that and, connecting with them, having content that reaches them, all those types of things. So,
well, and being mindful of LinkedIn is very important too, because even from an efficiency standpoint, let's say, as an example, you're providing services that are more suited for like marketing firms. On LinkedIn, marketing people tend to hang with marketing people. They tend to comment and they tend to like each other's posts. So it's very easy to find, like, you have a prospect that you want to talk to. Fantastic. While you're doing the research, also be mindful of, okay, who are they hanging out with? Conversationally or postfully, I guess is a for lack of a better verb. Then if they're typically going to hang out with more marketing professionals, and therefore those are more prospects for you. So not only are you doing the research into that specific transaction, but now you're doing more easier and more efficient prospecting, because prospecting is the bane of salesperson's existence. But it's easier if you can do it in one chunk, where you say, okay, listen, here's John Smith. John Smith is a marketing professional at this size of firm. But hold on a second, he just posted something and now there's 26 comments. It really behooves you to look at those 26 comments to see who's commenting. Because if you have this, the service that helps John, maybe there's 7 or 8 people within those 26 comments that could also use your service. So now you're not having to go to Navigator. You're not having to get lead gen done. You're not having to go to a list. Automatically, that's almost like it's a prospect qualified prospect. Because they hang.
Yeah, that's a great point. And again, one that maybe people aren't paying attention to. A lot of times I hear from business owners and leadership teams, people that are in sales roles, it's kind of that, I'm not big on social media. I don't want to get out there. I don't want to create content. I don't want to do things like that. But what you just brought up, regardless of the position that you hold, because I firmly believe, and my guess is that you're going to agree with me, but everybody is in sales, right? Everybody is selling something. And so the point is, because of that, if you can do things like comment on somebody's post and start to make connection points that way, you're building, your personal brand, you're making connections. And again, you're providing value and ultimately on your quest to build these relationships that at some point, whether it's directly or my favorite, indirectly,
right.
results in an opportunity. And that opportunity doesn't necessarily mean financial transaction, right? Conversation, additional step in the relationship building process.
Yeah. And if you look at LinkedIn specifically, relationship, you can talk about all the relationship building factors. There's also relationship killing factors, right? And LinkedIn is a great way of killing a relationship, because if you have a prospect in mind, let's go back to my John Smith example. If like, sometimes it's not very efficient, but if it is feasible to look at your company and to kind of understand, okay, yes, Ryan is representing a company. I want to sell to John Smith, but I need to be mindful of who else is in my company that's posting on LinkedIn. And they're posting stuff that could be considered as inflammatory or caustic or just a different opinion than some. If it's not kind of towards that agnostic side, you have to understand that part of your research is okay, what is John going to think if my coworker has been posting these things, right? And then quickly mitigate that risk. Quickly have a discussion with your coworker, have a discussion with your manager. Okay, listen, here's the situation. I would love to sell to John, but these posts will kill this relationship quicker than I can build it. So what do we do, right? So yes, relationship building is very important. Mitigating the risk of relationship killing is, I would say, almost as important, if not more so, because it takes less time and it's more seismic.
I love that, because a couple of things. One, again, knocking them out, killing them here in terms of setting me up for my next question. But
thanks, buddy.
Before I get into that, oftentimes, and jump in here, because I'm sure you've heard the same thing. Oftentimes you'll hear business owners, maybe a sales manager, somebody that's in a leadership role in terms of, the sales cycle side of things. But you'll hear things like, well, I don't want to encourage my team to post and kind of create their own personal brand on these social platforms for exactly what you just said.
Right.
That's the fear, right? So we've talked about the relationship killers, but just talk about the positive side of that if you can, because I think that's where kind of that power in numbers can really be an attractor 100%. to propel, right? We've talked about that relationship killer, but I think it can really be a, relationship propellant, right, when you have everybody in the organization not only building their personal brand, but talking about kind of company initiatives and things like that. What's your takeaway on that?
Well, it goes back to what you said about it's very about people doing directly or indirectly doing sales. Everyone is a salesperson. It's a controversial statement, but that's the way it is. And people always influence sales in some degree. You can make your best efforts to have a great LinkedIn following, great posts. So on the positive side, you can have a frontline person, sales marketing, what you want to call them, customer facing, and they could have a very strong content strategy. And specifically on the positive side, you could have everyone in the company has almost like this want or inclination to share, send posts to other people, because that has value. It shows like there's a local tech sales incubator here in Kitchener-Waterloo, and if one of them posts something, automatically, boom, 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 10 likes, all from that same company, and I love it. I love the fact that there's a cohesion to the effort, and I'm sure it's encouraged from the top all the way down. On the negative side, absolutely, sales leadership, upper management of a company, whoever has that kind of proverbial hammer to say, listen, like somebody is making our road from we have something to sell to we have sold something. If that road becomes more abrasive or frictional because of somebody's activity, not on LinkedIn, but now on other social media posts, right? Or just a like general a negative thing that happened in life, right? Understand, especially when you consider the fact that these buyer-seller relationships are now, very heavily leveraged towards the buyer. If you give them any reason to go to your competitor, it's not only it's opportunity cost. Not only are they not buying from you, but they're buying from them. So now it's like in like hockey standings, right? If you're playing the team right in front of you and they beat you, then not only did you not get the 2 points, but they got the 2 points, right? So if you have a situation, especially in a tight industry, if you it's great to attain market share, but if you lose market share, it's even worse, because now you're going backwards. So you need to remove all caustic, negative, kind of corrosive stuff that's on LinkedIn, especially because, and I'm not saying that people are right or wrong with their opinion. It's just not the right forum. And it has a negative effect on your ability to make that sale.
I think that's just it. It's, some people may listen to that and say, well, you're impacting people's ability to, have freedom of speech and things like that. And to me, that just takes it too far, right? The point is that from a leadership perspective and ownership, a leadership perspective, you should be encouraging people to share their stories, kind of talk about the greater good of the company, the things that those initiatives and things that are happening throughout the company. And, from a kind of that mentorship role, when there's an opportunity and somebody is, creating some friction because of the things that they're posting, to me, that's an opportunity to have those types of conversations and, talk about things that, maybe it was a lapse of judgment. Maybe, they're having a bad day and, but to me, it's all about how do you approach that situation and have those difficult conversations and articulate, exactly where you're at from a company perspective. But again, too often I hear people lumping these things together and just saying, well, no, we don't encourage anybody to post because we don't want to take responsibility for it. And it's like, look, everybody's in sales, hey, there, we said it for like the third or fourth time now. So everybody's in sales. It doesn't matter if you want to recognize that or not. So if they're out there in a public forum, it doesn't matter if it's LinkedIn or Facebook or what have you. If they're out there in a public forum and they're saying things that other people can find, right? Other potential prospects, current clients, what have you, there is a risk of damage to, that particular 100%. Company's reputation. But, you take a lot of risks when you hire anybody, and for a whole lot of reasons outside of, what kind of social profile they build up. So, that's
not just that. You're right, David. It's also the fact that you're damaging your external facing reputation. You're also damaging the internal relationship, because now if as a salesperson, if I find out that somebody else in the company has been putting forth some what I would consider negative posting, then they are now preventing me from making a sale, or they're making it a lot more difficult, and therefore because inevitably we take that the next step further. If someone's going to take that sale away from me, they're taking success away from me. You go all the way down, you're taking food off my table, if you want to take it down a few levels. So there's going to be a natural inclination to think, okay, now we're strained because I know that person cost me, that sale. That goes back to relationship. Right. It goes back to risk mitigation, because if you have a strong relationship and let's say as a salesperson, I have a strong relationship with a buyer, and the buyer sees that my coworkers put some terrible stuff online, instead of them going to upper management on their side, they come to me first and they say, listen, Ryan, I would love to go to bat for you in this one, but look at this. And right away, it gives me the chance, if I've built that relationship strong enough, it gives me a chance to eliminate that negativity before it kind of permeates into the buyer's company. right? And I think the biggest mitigation strategy for leadership, what you're talking about, is looking at things that there's only two real results from any decision, anything really, and that's a win and a lesson, right? If you have a loss of any kind, that means you didn't learn, right? So if you keep all of the results to wins and lessons, I think that becomes a good way of putting it forth without using that strong arm tactic of you just lost us this. Look at it as, okay, frame that as a lesson. Okay, how do we not do this again? Right? Yes, it sucks, and it goes back to that leadership belief that you want to support in public and then discipline in private. Right. Yeah. So if this person puts out these negative posts, it's up to leadership to make that decision on how they handle it. But it's also up to myself as a salesperson. How do I handle it? Right. Like, can I go be supportive? Obviously that they might know that they screwed up. So the last thing they need is for me to pile on. Right. So maybe they need me to go over there and just say, listen, I just want you to know, yes, it hurt. My chances of making the sale hurts the company, but is there anything I can do to help next time? Is there anything I can do? Can I give you advice on what to post, when, etc.? Or maybe you want to float it by me and say, listen, like, Ryan, I really want to put this opinion forth. What's the best way of doing it? And maybe I help them find a better forum.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, as long as you want to support their freedom to speak for themselves and have an opinion and have a belief, but they need to see the bigger picture.
Yeah. And again, that's kind of all part of that relationship building from, the leadership and everybody on the team, because back to what you were saying, in the granular sense, yes, maybe something like that took food off of your table, but I would make the argument equally that it took food off of their table. And understanding the big picture is the only way to understand how your actions are going to impact somebody else throughout the organization and ultimately yourself, right? So yeah, that's a huge key thing. So, there's a lot of really, we could talk about the leadership side of this for a long, long time. But
it could be a series. Like
maybe that's show number 2. I like that.
Right. In my 25 years, I think I've managed I want to say about 450 people, and everything's different. Everyone is different. Yeah. Every situation is different. So leadership is something that I put a lot of time and effort into. Always trying to become a better leader. And sometimes it's you kind of hit that when it comes to relationship. The leadership kind of employee relationship is probably the most important, because once a leader has determined that they want to be successful, goes back to motivation, then they're open to the idea of things like, wow, I was really wrong on that. Wow, I need to be better. Or to be vulnerable, right? These are all things that whatever you need to do that's, number 1, genuine, and number 2, supportive of your team, and number 3, make them better. That's the ultimate, kind of leadership triumvirate, right? The kind of triangle of leadership success.
No, again, spot on, because, having been in a similar situation and led many people at many different, facilities throughout my career, same thing, right? Some of the most impactful and kind of breakthrough moments were when I said things like, hey, I messed this up. Yeah. And I recognized that I messed this up, and I either made a decision that I shouldn't have made, and, based on these factors, but here's what I learned. And you approach it from the standpoint of, how can we move forward together, and how can I take some additional information in from you guys? And it's tough to do, right? It's very difficult to do from a leadership perspective. So yeah, maybe I think we need to schedule what's that?
It goes back to wins and lessons.
Yeah.
Right? And the lesson is sometimes you just got to sit in the sword and say, listen, like, my bad.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. 100%. Well, let's wind this down, Ryan. Share with me some final thoughts on this. can you share with me maybe a final thought around the idea of, and we've kind of talked about this, but maybe sum it up for us, what do salespeople get wrong about building relationships?
Yeah, I think there's two things. Number one, like as I said at the start of the recording, it's all about quantitative not influencing qualitative, and qualitative being the base of quantitative. I think if you're always, as a salesperson, you're always looking at numbers. Numbers are great. Like, don't worry, the operational side of sales is very important. But if you look at, long-term success, and you establish kind of, is your sales strategy strategic or tactical? And specifically, is that conversation strategic or tactical? Is it the one piece of one, or is it the one brick of a wall of a relationship? So there's understanding that the numbers are very important, but the numbers don't really influence the qualitative side as readily as the feeling, the mood, the tone of the relationship influences the numerical success. And the second thing is, I think it's all about learning. Always learn. It goes back to research. You're learning about the person you across the table from, virtually, I guess. It's all about learning about your competitors. What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? It's all about learning how different people in your company can support your sales strategy. It's all about learning, from other people about how to be a better salesperson, right? Like, find the right mentor. And you could be, 25 years in the industry. Like my supply chain, I was there, I think 21 and a half years I was in supply chain. I was still picking up mentorship from different people at the end of my stay, because I want to keep learning and I want to be better, because it's almost like learning is, you're picking up these pearls of wisdom and you never know who's going to need that pearl from you. Right. So you pick it up and you give it away. And that's the way that business works, is that it's all cyclical. So learn what impact you can have. And so keep an open mind, build a relationship as best you can. Because understand that, like I said before, to kind of summarize, a strong relationship is literally the best risk mitigation strategy.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today and sharing all of this knowledge, because it was tremendous, man. So many amazing insights in there. So I will make sure to put your LinkedIn profile for anybody that's interested in connecting with you. I'll make sure to put that in in the show notes as well. And again, Ryan, thanks so much for coming on the Everyday Business Problems podcast.
Oh, Dave, it's been a pleasure, man.
Thank you so much for listening today. If we brought you any value, please rate, subscribe, and share our podcast. Also, be sure to connect with us on social media by searching @The Chrysler Club. Until next week, I'm your host, Dave Chrysler.